Hi guys, welcome back. Excuse me, I've been fighting a cold. And welcome back to us talking about autism. And I am autistic, as many of you guys already know, as are most of my family, my wife, my stepson. So we just want to bring awareness out there to people. As I say in every one of our videos, autism is the fastest growing developmental or learning disability in the United States. It is also the least funded. It is the least funded, and in a lot of ways it is the least understood. More research and more information is being disseminated out there every day, which is helping with the understanding of it. But as I researched it more, which I didn't discover I was on the spectrum until fairly recently, and it makes a lot of things clearer as I think back to my childhood and early adulthood. But once we had our child diagnosed, and the more I researched it, the more I read into it, the more there was to learn. And so many people just don't understand enough about it. Now, as much as I know now, I can look around and I spot people on an everyday basis, coworkers, clients, guests, just random people that are absolutely on the scale, on the spectrum, that most people just don't realize. Most people don't realize because there's not enough information out there. A lot of people's understanding of autism is at the lower end of the spectrum, and they don't understand the whole wide range of the spectrum and what it entails. So we believe in just trying to bring more information out there. Most of you probably know somebody that is autistic, well, guaranteed to know somebody that's autistic, but could very well be close to somebody that's autistic, be it a family member, a coworker, a friend, a child, or yourself. So we just, again, want to bring more information out there to everybody. So today we want to talk about some of the signs, and this is not a comprehensive list because the list is huge, but some of the signs of autism in children, early childhood. I'm talking, toddler or pre-toddler. I'm not going to go into, like grade school level. And again, this is just a few of the signs, some of the more common signs, but again, just a few of the signs. One thing about autism, the autism spectrum, is that it is so wide. The ASD umbrella covers so many things. No two autistics are alike. They're not. Even if they have some of the same symptoms, the way they present those symptoms and the way they deal with those symptoms will be wildly different. No two are alike. So that's part of what has made it so difficult to diagnose and so difficult to understand throughout the last century, since we really started researching it and learning about it. And again, since it's a bioneurological disorder, and some people don't really think of it as a disorder. I don't. It's just a different way the brain works. The brain works in a very, very logical way, in some cases illogical way, but just different. It just works different, and that makes it very difficult to diagnose. Very difficult to diagnose, especially as people get older. So some of the early childhood signs. Now, the first one is fairly obvious because we have talked about this in the past. Lack of eye contact or difficulty with eye contact. Especially the more, I guess, serious the situation may be. That's my fuzzy co-star walking by. What I mean by that is, like, a child, may not prefer eye contact and may avoid eye contact, but do it on occasion. Make eye contact with you and such when you're playing games or you're having fun, although they're quite possibly looking somewhere else around your face. But if they're in trouble and you try and get them to look in your eyes, they will actively turn their head. They will not look in your eyes. And they just can't. They absolutely cannot. Another one of the signs, and this one is definitely in the earlier age category, is not responding or acknowledging when you call them or talk to them by name by around 9 months or so. So basically less than a year old, they still have not figured out, they still don't understand their own name, don't understand that it refers to them, that is their name and that is who they are. It can be a sign of autism. It's not guaranteed, but it can be a sign of autism. Repeating phrases. Now this comes a little bit later when they start, when they are becoming verbal. Being nonverbal by the age of 4 is definitely a sign of autism, and it is not a sign that needs to scare a parent. There are a lot of autistic children that are nonverbal at the age of 4, and within a couple of years, have achieved a fluency far beyond their peers at the same age group. So autistic children may be later to become verbal, but they oftentimes will exceed the standard, exceed what is considered the acceptable learning level. Not all of them, of course. Somewhere around 30% will never become entirely fluent, but for the most part. And the earlier it's diagnosed, and the earlier that speech and language therapy can begin, the more help that they are going to get, the more likely they are to be able to progress. Because again, as we've mentioned in the past, autism is not a degenerative thing. It's not a disease. Again, bioneurological disorder. Your brain just works differently. So it's not a disease. They're not broken. That also means it's not degenerate. You don't become more autistic over time. You know, your autism doesn't become worse. In fact, it can progress. More often than not, it becomes less noticeable over time. That does not mean that it disappears or the person becomes less autistic. Again, it becomes less noticeable over time, usually due to things such as masking and stuff like that. And I'll talk about some of my masking that I have figured out I do in some of our private videos on our Patreon. I don't want to put it out there for everybody. So once they become verbal, repeating phrases over and over and over and over again, repeating the same thing over and over and over and over again, that is definitely a sign of autism, because just about any repetitive behavior is a sign of autism. Sensitivity to some of the senses. For instance, light can oftentimes be a symptom of autism. Sensitivity to light, especially bright lights or flashing lights. Unfortunately, because autism can also have comorbidity with epilepsy, that can be a difficult one to diagnose, and can be a frightening one to diagnose as well. But there's other ones: sensitivity to textures and certain tactile feelings, sensitivity to sound, especially loud sounds, and unexpected loud sounds, for sure. Even sensitivity to certain tastes. And even textures of food. I know at least one that is very, very, very sensitive to textures of food. Not the taste, but certain textures of food will make them nauseous. So they refuse to eat certain things. And this is an adult, by the way. So these things carry through your entire life. These sensitivities to certain things. Mine is loud noises, although I also have exceptional hearing, so my ears are already sensitive. Also, children that may not play pretend as early as some of their peers. And what I mean by that is children will pretend to be a superhero if they've watched a lot of superhero movies, or pretend to be a firefighter or a cop, or play cowboys and Indians and stuff like that. And autistic children tend to not do that, especially not as early. Eventually they start to become a little bit more imaginative, but earlier on they tend to not play pretend as much, and that likely stems from how literal and how literal the brain tends to work. So they don't tend to be that imaginative. They don't really understand the concept of pretending to be something you're not, which ends up causing difficulties later in life when it comes to language and interacting with people who tend to say things they don't mean, or say things in ways that you're supposed to interpret, that continues to cause difficulties later on in life, for sure. Repetitive playing, and what I mean by this is not so much playing with the same toys over and over, although that is most definitely one of the signs, but even things such as lining up the toys, and being very upset when those toys are not lined up properly, which is also why autism can have a lot of comorbidity to OCD. I know one child that their thing to an almost, I'm not going to say strange, but very noticeable and over-the-top level, washing their hands. They would be eating and jump up to go run to the bathroom to wash their hands, to come back and keep eating, to jump up to run to the bathroom to wash their hands over and over and over and over again. and they have difficulty playing with things that get on their hands because they need to wash their hands over and over and over and over. And if you try and convince them not to, try and convince them to wait until, say, they finish eating the barbecue chicken that they're getting all over their hands, it'll get to the point of a full-blown meltdown, crying, screaming fit, because they need to wash their hands. That is repetitive type of behavior. Same thing can happen with the toys. Again, lining the toys up, always putting them in the same spot, always playing with them the exact same way. Along with that, very precise, I suppose, interests, or more like detail-oriented interests. For instance, got a big truck, toy truck, and it's just absolutely fascinating with the wheels. Absolutely fascinating with the wheels. And then it gets fascinating with the wheels of all their toy cars. That's a sign of autism. Again, these are not end all be all. If this pops up, oh, that child's autistic. Because again, kids are different. Kids like to have fun, and kids get fascinated by little things. In the totality, when you add these things together, is how you end up with a potential diagnosis. Again, you need a professional to make the diagnosis, of course, and it could take some time. Emotional control and getting overwhelmed is a huge side of autism. Children start out, especially pre-toddler and toddler, they have no understanding of consequences. They have no understanding of proper behavior. They have no understanding of right or wrong. Children are almost, from birth until they start learning consequences and empathy and stuff like that. And autistic children have difficulty with empathy. Children are basically born sociopaths. They don't really have anything except their own desires. And autistic children can continue to struggle with that even longer than most children. They have no understanding of anything outside of themselves in a lot of ways. They have no ability to control their emotions. If they find something funny, they're going to do it, even if it's you're talking a 3-year-old that loves their pet cat but finds it absolutely hilarious to haul off and deck it in its face. They find that hilarious, or to kick it off the couch. They find it hilarious and they don't understand. Or they want to play with their toys, they're told no, and they start breaking things and punching and kicking things and throwing things, and that's a lack of emotional control and an inability to deal with their emotions. And if it progresses, if it continues, they become overwhelmed. I have seen autistic children that are told they cannot do something, or that something needs to stop, say at playtime, or it's time to leave somewhere that they're having a lot of fun, and they start having their meltdown. And of course, they're not going to reward a meltdown, but I mean, it puts a parent in a really, really tough situation, because if you fold, then that meltdown just is going to be twice as likely to happen next time around. So you need to find a way to teach them consequences, and teach them how to deal with it, because I've seen it to the point where they're so overwhelmed with their emotions they can't even breathe. It's crazy to see. They're hyperventilating. They cannot control their breath, cannot control their breathing. It's because they're overwhelmed with their emotions, and they don't know how to deal with it. They do not understand how to deal with it. It's also the reason why when an autistic child, especially a very, very, very young one, is punished, their behavior actually gets worse. They know that they got punished for something, but they cannot control themselves. They are so emotionally charged from the punishment that they just got, that they become worse. A child that gets in trouble for throwing something at their parent gets punished for it, and now they're squirming and kicking and punching things, and they break a couple things and break a door and 2 toys, and are banging on the glass with something hard, and they get punished again, and it gets worse because they're overwhelmed. They are overwhelmed, and they cannot deal with that emotion. They're unable to. It makes it a struggle for a parent, for sure. Another sign, and this is not, again, every autistic child, but another possible sign of autism in a child is what's called stimming. And stimming is something that is fairly common through the entire level of the ASD spectrum, all ages, and it is generally typified by things such as rocking, or flapping the hands, flapping, and this I've seen a lot, rocking. That is stimming. Even, to adults, they may start stimming in ways that are a little bit more hidden because they've learned to mask, such as bouncing their leg underneath the table or something along those lines. That's stimming. It really is. Doesn't mean that every time somebody's doing that they're stimming, but for an autistic person, that might be the stim that they have learned as they've gotten older, so that they can hide it better. But stimming, rocking is a common one, especially when they're really engaged in something, especially nowadays with the rise of tablets and stuff like that. Before it would be like watching TV and stuff like that, sitting there rocking. But now it could be playing a video game, and you're staring at the video game, and they're just rocking back and forth while they're staring at the game, and they're so excited they might be bouncing up and down while they're rocking. That's called stimming, and it is definitely a very, very common thing. So again, guys, these are not all the symptoms of ASD. These are not all the signs of ASD, because there really is no comprehensive list. There is just too much going on with ASD. It's huge. The umbrella is absolutely massive. Now, if you guys are interested in learning more about it or possibly helping with the research, look at the links down below. We're adding a whole bunch of different things to try and help, because again, it's the least funded of all the developmental and learning disabilities out there. And most of the funding and most of the research is private funding and private research. So, if you're interested in it, just check the links down below, take a look. And otherwise, guys, we will catch you guys next time. Thank you everybody for watching, and bye now.